Israel Adesanya lost his last fight. We talked about it in a couple podcasts ago and stuff like that, and we talked about the last one. He loses to Sean Strickland, shocking, one of the bigger upsets. Some people call him the biggest upset in UFC history. He now lost 2 out of his 3. Definitively got knocked out versus Alex Pereira. Definitively lost. The judges had him losing 4 of the 5 rounds against Strickland. He's lost 2 of his last 3. Now just got arrested, DUI, like 34. A lot of mileage on his body. He's got, I think, 27 MMA fights, and that's before a whole bunch of fights in kickboxing where he's a champion. This feels like the decline. He's messing up in the cage. He's messing up out of the ring. Maybe his life and focus ain't there to be great anymore. He was as good as it gets when he was at his best. Is this the end of, is not Israel Adesanya as a good fighter, just like his days as a champion, elite fighter, at 34 are done. Like, he's no longer the pound for pound star he was for like the last half decade.
I think it's safe to say that there's a problem. Probably more so in his personal life than his professional. I mean, the interesting part about the DUI was that the news that we heard, I believe that was like Monday, I think that the news broke, that he pled guilty to a DUI that had already occurred. And that DUI happened when he should have been in the middle of his training camp to fight Sean Strickland. It was just like a couple of weeks out from the fight. That's the problem. That is a huge problem, because that shows you're not training the way you should. You're enjoying excesses of life as opposed to being focused on what got you there in the first place. And that's a trap that many have fallen. That is just the most common story in combat sports, it feels like. Now, at 34 years old, with the amount of fights that he's had, and by the way, he's had 80 kickboxing fights, 80 professional kickboxing fights with a 75-5 record. So you add that to his nearly 30 MMA fights, that is 110 times or 107 times that he's walked into a ring or a cage with the intent to do harm, standing across from someone who intends to do him harm.
And did weeks or months of training before he walked into that cage for that fight.
And I didn't even include his boxing record. I had let me see what his boxing record is, because I know he's got a few boxing matches. Oh, he's 5-1 as a boxer. So you're talking about 113 times that man has faced a trained killer, and battle was done and people got hurt. That is a lot of mileage. And 34 years old, is about the time when the body starts revolting against some of the athletic pursuits of life. So it's not looking good for him, but I think it's too early to just write him off just yet. Perhaps it could have been a weak moment. He could have been going through something and we didn't know, and he chose to self-medicate in a harmful way, and it manifested himself like that. So I don't know. I'd have to see him fight again. I've got to see him fight again and see what happens, but he is certainly not doing things the right way at this moment. That's for sure.
I'm going to say this. I got my paper. I'm writing him off. He's written off. Israel Adesanya as an elite fighter, going to be champion again. It's not going to happen. You know why it's not going to happen, Anthony? Not necessarily because he's 34, because we've seen great fighters still good at 34. It's not here. It's just not there anymore. You can't make a fighter hungry. And then if there's ever a perfect example, this guy went in there, fought his greatest rival ever, got knocked out, came ferociously back to regain his title, did it. We're all going to remember the arrows. We're all going to remember that for years. And his next chance to prove, whoa, that wasn't a fluke. He's back. He's the champion again in his second reign as champion. This guy lays up an egg. An egg against a fighter that everybody thought he could win. A guy who's now saying, I thought he was going to be better. You're supposed to be one of the greatest fighters of all time, and you maybe were out drinking in your first title defense of your second reign after you lost. It just, we've seen it, and we've seen it. We've watched UFC for 30 years now. We've seen it in box too. It's hard to reach the top and stay hungry to stay at the top. Better men have tried and failed. George St. Pierre, the signs were as clear as day, and he said, I got to get out before I lose. He made fights with Jake Shields, Johnny Hendricks, and Nick Diaz look hard when 3 years before he would have just run through those guys. John Jones, another perfect example. He made fuck, like Reyes and Santos, and he made these guys look like world beaters because he just wasn't interested anymore. He could have took them all down, beat them up, and into a pummel them. Like, I'm bored. Let me strike with them. Anderson Silva, this guy was fooling around in there against Chris. You know, we've seen it. Conor McGregor. He's not fighting again. We talked about on this show. This man's not fighting. When you're rich and you get filthy rich, and Israel Adesanya had the benefit of coming into the sport right at the right time where he's making good money, it's hard to just make someone hungry. And that's the thing. He's just not hungry. And to stay at the top, and I'm not saying Israel's done as a fighter. He'll still have fights. He'll still get wins. But to stay at the top, you have to have a special hunger, a special fear, and it's just not there for him. He's human, and he's enjoying the luxuries of life, and I just don't think Israel has it anymore. And when you're messing around in life, you mess around in the cage, never a good sign. So I'll say it again.
Right,
Sorry, Israel.